Well, let's talk more to the Labour leader, Andrew Little. He's in the Wellington studio with me. He was also listening to that previous piece. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Bill English is saying that he is hearing this anecdotally as he goes around the country. Is that something you also hear?
You hear it anecdotally, but what I hear from employers is that they want to employ, young New Zealanders, any New Zealanders. I met with a bunch of horticulturalists in Hawke's Bay last year, and they said, yep, they get WINS refers to them young workers who've been out of work for 6 months or more, but often they haven't had any kind of preface to that, so they turn up there, they're not ready for work. They had a very simple request, which is, could WINS spend 2 weeks with these people who've been out of work for a long time, and some of them have used marijuana. Give them 2 weeks to get into the practice of getting up early, getting to work on time. If they test positive at the beginning of the 2 weeks, give them a couple of weeks to clean up and get it out of their system, and then turn up to a horticulturalist or a farmer or wherever and get stuck in and get into work. I don't think that's too much to ask, and what I resent deeply about the National Party and Bill English, because we heard it from him last year when he talked about young people being pretty damn hopeless, is there's all these excuses for the government not to do anything to get young people into work. How about finding some solutions to get young people into work and do the right thing for New Zealanders?
A couple of things there. Drug Detection Agency saying that it's often meth that is now beginning to show up. And what are the implications, though, for health and safety rules? Like you're saying, people being given a couple of weeks' grace, basically, before they have to be testing negative on drugs. But what about if they're having to operate machinery as part of the job during that time? Yeah,
sure. Look, employers are entitled to say we want, anybody who's going to start work here has to return a positive test and be drug-free. That's their right to do that. And I know plenty of employers, particularly employing heavy labourers and that, saying they go through a recruitment exercise, somebody returns a positive test, they say come back in 3 weeks, and if it's a negative test and you do the right things, then we'll take you on board. So I think employers, they've got a job to get done, they need people on board, and they want to get people in work. So I think most employers take a responsible attitude. They've got to know, and I think it's pretty clear, that they want people who are safe at work. It's got to be. When you're thinking about your workmates are entitled to know that the people they're working with are safe. So no objection about that. On the issue of meth, there's no question that the meth scourge is growing, and in spite of this government's claim to have sort of clamped down on it and declared war on it, it is a big problem, and employers will tell you that.
So basically you're saying the Prime Minister's right, you're hearing the same sort of stuff anecdotally as you go around the country as well, and this is also being backed by Kim Campbell, who you heard in that previous report as well, saying the Prime Minister's bang on the money, the people are failing the tests. The difficulty here, though, is that 2 week period, and you're thinking, what, the government just doesn't step up enough here to give people a bit of a leg up into work?
I guess the question I'm posing is, why would the Prime Minister say that, particularly after his comments last year about young people being pretty damn hopeless? This all starts to look like an excuse for the government not to have to do anything, particularly about our young unemployed, which has gone up nearly more than 20,000 in the last year alone. 90,000 young people between 18 and 24, not in work, education or employment or training, and the government's does nothing about it and got no plan to do anything about it. Let's stop making excuses. And I say to young people, anybody, you return a positive test, you've got to be stood down. You can't expect to work alongside others who are safe and clean and doing the right thing.
And if people,
but you've got to be given a chance.
If employers though have a situation where they can employ somebody who's failing a drugs test, or they can employ somebody perhaps who's come in from overseas who's clean, what choice do you think they're actually going to have here? Yeah, see,
that's where it gets down to, and I don't accept this view that, therefore, we do a test or we decide that somebody's not fit for work here, so we're going to employ somebody from overseas. And you look at those immigration figures, more than 42,000 people coming in on work visas. They won't all be filling skills gaps that we can't fill in New Zealand. Some of those will be people doing work that New Zealanders are fit for and can do. So,
and what's wrong with immigration to New Zealand?
Well, nothing wrong with immigration to New Zealand. We've relied on immigration. We need immigration to fill the skills gaps that we've got. But when you have a look at immigration that people are coming in, there are a growing number who are coming in to do work of a sort of a semi-skilled nature, work that can be filled by New Zealanders here.
And should that be stopped?
Should what be stopped?
Should immigration in that circumstance be stopped?
We should use immigration to manage our workforce needs and the needs that we have. We shouldn't use it as a cover to have just anybody, because we just don't want to employ somebody locally. And I don't get this. I don't accept this view that we should look for an excuse to sort of exclude people who already live here from getting work here. And look, there's always going to be rough diamonds. There's always going to be people who might need a little bit of extra effort. But if the conversation that I had with those Hawke's Bay horticulturists last year is anything to go by, they are willing and want to take on local labour. They just want a bit of help, and particularly with WINS, who are managing long-term unemployed, to make sure that the people who turn up to work on their orchards and in their farms are ready to work and fit for work.
Just very briefly, would you like to see a cap on immigration?
I don't think. No, I just don't think a cap is manageable, because the skills gaps that we have in any one year will differ from period to period. So it's not about that, but it is about looking more closely at, when employers say they need to employ offshore, let's have a closer look at what it is they're saying they can't recruit from New Zealand before we sort of start issuing work visas for other people.
Thank you very much for your time. The Labour leader, Andrew Little, there, speaking to me in the Wellington studio.